5.
Excellent.
Hey everyone, it's Cate Stellman with Yoga Health Coaching and Yoga Healer, and I'm here with Alja. Alja, what country are you in? Germany?
No, I'm currently in Slovenia because I got COVID, so I have extended holidays, which has been pretty nice, so no complaints there.
Awesome. And when you return, where do you go?
I'm going back to Munich tomorrow morning.
To Munich.
So
Okay.
That's where I'm based, yeah.
Awesome. So you're studying brain science.
Yeah, that's it.
And where are you in that process?
Well, I'm doing my PhD currently. I just finished my year 3, and I'm actually looking to start finishing as soon as possible now. Which how long that's going to be, we'll see, because it doesn't depend just on me, but I would like to be out of there in latest a year from now.
Okay. And so are you writing?
Not yet. But that's kind of not actually the major part. The major part is kind of getting everything else ready before you write up. So all the experiments, the story, etc., which is the kind of the crux.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you've got about a year left. Is it more, and I know your questions are around your health coaching and the marketing and the sales cycle and enrollment and all that. What I'm trying to gauge is like, how much time do you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a great question, because I feel that it's been my PhD recently that's been really kind of preventing me from getting as much done as I wanted to. Honestly, it will really depend on how much needs to get done and what my supervisor and the rest of the committee say. There's a part of me that if they tell me that it's like a lot more to do, I'm actually thinking of dropping it, because it's been a pretty painful process. But I think the more important thing is here that I think what I'm becoming really clear on now is that like it can't be my priority anymore. I've kind of known this for a long time, but it's like this thing where you can't quite let go of something and focus on something else primarily, in this case, yoga health coaching. So I'm still trying to make my PhD work really well and make it really amazing, but now I'm realizing it's like, I don't care about it. Like, I'm not going to continue about that. It doesn't have to be, I don't need to publish in Nature. I don't need to publish super high. I just need to finish it and get out of here. So this has actually been a shift that happened maybe like 2-3 weeks ago, that I was like, oh my God, like I really need to stop this.
Okay. So what I'm hearing in that, and I want a little more clarity around that, is like you, at this point, you're like, I need to get it done.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like minimum viable product, like whatever gets you to done. Okay.
Exactly.
Now, but I'm also hearing some doubt as to whether or not it needs to get done, or whether you just want to walk away. And that depends on how much more work. I would, and I'm sure you would too, like hate to see yourself walk away if it's doable within the time period.
It is, but on the other hand, is also the question of like, yes, I put a lot of work into it, and if that means another 1.5 years to finish it, am I willing to put that much energy and effort and honestly, like, my soul into it? It's been kind of like really soul crushing, this whole process. Yeah. Like I've seen everything else suffer because of it, right? It's because I'm in a bad mood, because I don't have the energy to do other stuff. And it's actually, I feel like the stakes are higher than just not walking away with the credentials.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm kind of like, I'm just, it's like I'm at the level where I'm really done with it, but I can't be done with it if I want to finish it.
I know. And that's because I've helped people go back and finish the PhD they didn't finish 10, 20 years later. And that's painful. Yeah. So I wouldn't, there's a few different directions that we can take with this, right? I mean, my thought for you is that it's going to be more advantageous for you to finish what you started, and to focus your routines and everything in service of the expediency of that. And that in yoga health coaching, the PhD is going to, I mean, it's like, is it going to matter? Is it not going to matter? There's what and how old are you?
26.
26. So I've got like another 22 years on you. Whether or not that matters in this world, I'm not sure. But I do know that the depth of like so there's a word in Sanskrit called diksha, D-I-K-S-H-A, and diksha is initiation. It's the thresholds, right? In order to cross a certain threshold, there's just an insane amount of tapas, of friction, of tension, of doing the hard thing, which is why so few people have a PhD, myself included, in the not have category of that. And so the diksha of it, in honoring the past desire of the diksha of that, in who you would become in the process, I'm wondering if the deeper alignment for you in our session today is to help you actually gear up for finishing that, and to focus your life in a way that enables you to do that with the greatest ease, and not lose track that what you're learning, you're going to put into really into practical practice, right? And that's the frustration right now, is it seems so impractical. And so my guess is at the molecular level, and you want to zoom out and be useful and helpful and have a good life and enjoy all the good life, but like
yeah, that'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, and you're like 3/4 of the way down the rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you've got it, and if you don't see it through, there's going to be a level of what, and it's in the back of your mind, it's going to be that I didn't finish it. I wasn't the person who finished it versus I was the person who finished it. So, I mean, that's just my sense from, and it's not like I know you that well. But if you,
I mean, there's
give
the
me a fight
level
on it, we can duke it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's like a constant sort of conflict between like how much further do you keep pushing just to say that you accomplished something, right?
It's not just to say you accomplished it, it's the who you become in the process of accomplishing it, and that's the diksha. I was thinking about this in a really interesting way last night. It's always disturbed me. I can bring my mom into it. She'd like, I want to do it just to say I've done it. And I'm like, that language has always very, very much bothered me. And I don't even think she means it. I think it's just a common expression. It's kind of the bucket list thing. You want to do it because the person you become in the process of the one who had to do what needed to be done in order to do it. So I feel a responsibility, I don't know why, to help you finish this and get on the other side of it, because between 26 and 27, like say you live 100 years, you've got to push hard now and do the hard thing now, and you're 3/4 of the way done.
Yeah, but it's been painful.
Of course it's painful.
Yeah, no, I know. I just like, at some point, like I feel like I've been doing this thing for such a long time, where every time like things
but
get
then when
really
you're
hard.
done, you're done. Like what happens in a year and a half? Like you're free forever. You don't have to be, you can be done with academia. Like you've been in school since you were 5.
Yes, and that's the goal. Yeah. But is it like, what's it like? I understand this idea of what you're becoming in the process, right? But if what you're becoming in the process is just like someone who's really frustratingly just pushing through for the sake of pushing through, is that really aligned? Is that in integrity anymore? This has been my question. Like how much, like how, I've kind of known that I didn't want to do neuroscience, I didn't want to study academia since before I started my PhD. So the other way I'm looking at it is like, wow, I've been out of alignment for like a pretty long time. And it's clear that there's been a reason that I've gone through this, and a lot of good things came out of it. But now I'm kind of looking at it, is it like, I feel that the only thing I've been learning through it recently has been like one disappointment after the other, and getting sabotage, and even things that are like, at least objectively really out of your control, where other people are just like, no. It almost felt like the universe is kind of like, just get out, like nothing's working, which is not how I'm before. Things were tough, but it didn't feel like you were getting sabotaged at every step. And now I've been getting like a lot of this in the past 3, 4, 5 months, seeming just kind of like to steer me into this direction of like, either get it done or get out, which has been like quite a new experience actually.
Because you haven't allowed yourself the possibility of getting out.
Yeah, no, not before, right? Before it was always like, I'm gonna finish. And even, for example, 3-4 months ago, I was at a stage really when I was even willing to put more time and effort into it to try and get something good out of it, right? Because my approach has always been, I'm here to do good and fun science, and I enjoyed the problem solving process of the whole thing, right? That's like everything else that comes with it isn't fun, right? There's a lot of like laborious and tedious things to be done, but that was good. So, it came to the situations where like I really kind of pushed for it, organized everything, structured the whole thing, came with a plan, got it approved, and then had it shot down 2 weeks later by my supervisor with like no explanation, right? These kind of things that just got me left of like, now I can't even do good science. Like I can't, it's just kind of the whole thing's a bit bullshitty. And I think this is what really got me to the frustration level where I'm like, why am I still here? Like I have so many talents and gifts, like I could be doing so many other things. And now I'm sitting here trying to get something together that isn't even going to be good at the end. And that's, I think, the frustration.
And you can't have a conversation like this with your supervisor?
I did. I told her.
What happened?
Well, she's not very good at taking any sort of criticism, and she's very good at finding explanations around it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it came down to kind of the core of her just not knowing what to do with the whole situation. Her being super busy, having other priorities, not really wanting to sit down and take time to try and figuring out with me, and realizing that it's really late in the process to get something good working. And she straight up told me, if you want something really good out of it, you'll have to stay for at least 2 more years. And then I'm not willing to do, right?
Got you.
So it's been just like this kind of like situation that it's not just like finishing, it's going to be I don't know, maybe I'm just like, maybe that's also like some sort of limiting beliefs and making up stories in my mind, but I can't see how this process can go smoothly. And I'm worried that it's going to drag on for so much longer, because then eventually there is always the pressure that comes of like, just make it good. It's like, but it's going to take so long and it's going to take so much work.
Okay. So when you think of quitting, like just walking away today, there's obviously, I'm sure there's a lot of energy. I'm sure that feels really good.
There's like this energy, to it. It's like, I'm so done energy. But there is also the energy of like, fuck, I'm walking away, and there's been a lot of energy put into it. It's a conflict.
And that's what we need to get to the root of. There's no chance of another supervisor at this stage.
No, I don't think so. I think the whole process of getting there would be longer than me finishing.
Yeah. Okay, so when you look for the good in the feedback she gave you, and sometimes you have to start really small. What was constructive?
What was constructive was that she said she would support me, whatever my decision. So this
stay or go.
Yeah, if I go, that she would. I mean, then she doesn't have to do that much, right? It's kind of the easy way out for her. But if I now say,
doesn't look good though for her, does it? I mean, from her supervisor.
No, it actually looks terrible, and I'm definitely not the first student walking away potentially
from her.
Yeah, there's been.
Have you talked to her boss, her supervisor?
From the same supervisor. Like my lab mates walked away from the same supervisor.
And have you talked to her supervisor?
She doesn't have one. She's the boss.
Who cuts her check? It's the university, right?
No, that's the thing. She got now a directorship position at another Max Planck Institute. She's like top of the food chain. Like, I mean, you would need to go way above, and that would be just like a really long bureaucratic process.
Yeah.
The beauty of academia.
So there's a reason she's the top.
Yeah, I mean, she can do good science. Doesn't mean she's a good manager.
Yep. Okay. So that's a very good thing to know by 26. So good on that. Hard lesson learned. They usually are like the ones worth learning. So what else does she bring to the table that you ended up with her? Let's just look at the karma of it.
There's been just, I think, I mean, we've had recently some good conversations where, you know, we both got very clear on sort of like where the mistakes may have happened along the way, right? Because it's like I got clear on the fact that I should have stepped up earlier and I should have demanded more earlier, which I didn't do.
Okay.
So this was clear to me, is like I could have done things differently. On her side, it was the fact that she was so busy with everything else that she basically dropped everything. And it's not just me, right? It's like every other PhD in the lab. It's a very similar problem. It's just that I'm a little bit further along than the rest of them. So for me, it's late to change things.
Okay. So how can you apply that to the future?
I need to make sure I constantly keep bugging her until things actually get done.
Okay.
And honestly, prioritize myself, right? This is also something that I'm not very good at, actually being selfish, quote unquote, or actually asking to have my needs met. So like, I will just kind of like leave things and be like, oh, it's going to work out. I'm just going to do my part, but I don't actually check with the other side, whether or not they actually are holding up their part of the deal. So I know that this is something from my side, and it's a recurring theme. And this is something I learned. It's like I should have acted earlier. And this is something going forward that I need to be the one pushing, and I need to be the one scheduling meetings, and I need to be the one making sure that she actually knows I exist.
Okay, good. So how would you apply that in the next 2 weeks?
I'm meeting with her on Friday, and I'm going to discuss the next steps and what the options are. So what is like basically just saying, if I want to get out of here as soon as possible, what are the next steps? What needs to get done? And start working on it, engaging people that need to get engaged, getting all the requirements in, whatever I'm still missing, and basically seeing from there on. But I think just being more proactive in general with every step, like kind of, this is something I find really hard as well, is like the authority aspect. Like it's you know, actually coming with certain demands, coming with saying, this is my plan, this is what I want, how can we get there? Yeah. But most of the time I'm like, oh, but they have been doing this for so long, they must know better. While not keeping in mind that actually it's really not what they care about. So I have to be the one putting the work in and being proactive. I think this is like a really big thing as well. Good.
Good. So take that in, like you have to change.
No.
Yes. If you don't want to keep experiencing it, because I know from the form that you filled out, it was more about YHC and marketing and enrollment, but it's the same lesson. It's the same exact lesson.
Yeah.
You can't be in the feminine receptive in certain stages, and like in certain stages of work, and then also in certain sectors of work.
Yeah. And you know, it's not even like, it doesn't even feel like receptive. It just feels like submissive and coming from low self. Yeah. And that's really the part that I've been, and this is the same root cause, I think, for a lot of YHC. Like this is coming up, like self-worth issues and like not being good enough and not actually having anything valuable to offer, right? Yeah. This is like, and that's been the same thing in my neuroscience, is like, and you know, you look at it rationally, like, how can you think that? Like, it's so much, but there's like this nagging, like, it's just, what can you actually give, right?
Yeah. So there's so many ways to work with that. And a lot of it is just deciding, and it's like, you just cut off the other options. Like, and that's identity evolution in a way. It's the fake it till you become it. Like Amy Cuddy, I don't know her background. It might be neuroscience, or it might be behavioral science. I don't know. But it's basically like you can just act as another person. Like deity worship comes to mind. Also, acting. It's like act it until you become it, where you actually take on the behaviors. This will make sense to you as a brain scientist. You take on the behaviors, even though they don't relate to the ego. So it's not the ego acting, like doing what it normally does, doing the pattern, doing the samskaras, doing the pattern. It's making a choice. In deity worship, like the way it was practiced, or the way it is practiced, is it's like first thing in the morning, right? It's like you just short circuit the subconscious into the conscious, and you get really clear of like, I'm going to act like that person would act today. So for instance, this past weekend, my family was out of town, and I kind of have a hard push right now with finishing Wild Habits. Like, I've just got to get a manuscript. And it's close. You know, but I'm still doing research too while I'm writing, which is like, you know, and you know how research goes, like you can just go
always
and go
takes
and
longer.
go. And you can just keep
There's
doing
no end to it.
There's no end to it. There is no end. There's only
it's like, no, it's a great practice in just like allowing yourself to be like, this is enough.
Yeah,
I'm not going any further.
I can't go any further. I'm not allowed. So I have watched A Day in the Life of Lex Friedman, Lexfridman, right? And he does
that dude is crazy.
He's crazy. He's crazy, right? He's not crazy though. He's like, I mean, he's a little bit machine-like.
Yeah,
but that's right.
It. Which makes sense.
He's also full of love. He's got good Shakti.
Yeah.
And he's found what works. And it's like he does those 3-4 hour stints a day of focus work, right? And there's this level of intolerance of that which distracts from getting the goal done.
Yeah.
So once you decide, you're going to do it. So I would say on Friday, decide, like with your supervisor in the room. And after that, like once that decision is made, no more tolerance of the fluctuations of the mind. I mean, and that is your yoga, is it's like, no more, cut off all other options until it's done. Don't let the mind fluctuate. Like write the goal down, just follow his day in the life. Do like, write down the long-term goal, write down the short-term goal, write down what you're doing that day, you know, like just get 1000% focused and realize that, yeah, you do not have a social life. You do not like your yoga is finishing the PhD, right? Coaching your group is minimal, but the why, like why you're learning is because you're going to, who you're becoming and the application of it. It's all going to be waiting right there. You're going to be, if you decide on yes, and if you decide on no, then you can 100% commit to that for like 2 weeks and see if it turns into a yes or not.
Yeah.
Right. But if you get yes, like it's going to be a lot faster. And the fluctuation is what's going to keep that submissive energy. It's like someone to save the day, the better supervisor to save the day, the better blah, blah, blah. It's like, doesn't happen.
Gone. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So then if it's a yes and you go and you decide, then the strictness of the schedule, and it is like to put your head down and just be done and then be free of school forever. Yeah. But you have to know your deeper whys or you're going to lose it. And so with your supervisor, get into why, like I need to get really clear on why this work is important and ask her for advice.
It's very interesting when you ask scientists these questions. Suddenly it becomes very fluffy. Yeah, I mean, this has been really at the core of it, right? It's like just realizing that's why I'm switching to something so different in a way, because it's like the application of it.
Well, let me tell you my perspective. I'm now having to learn biochemistry at 48. I'm watching like med student biochem tutors on YouTube.
I know exactly how that is.
There's some really cute guys I'm following. It's like Dr. Mike and Dr. Mark or something like that. It's so cute. This Italian guy who's super buff explaining biochem. That helps. But yeah, I don't know it. And the degree, I would look at it instead. I feel like there's this level, and I don't take it the wrong way at all, but it's like you have an opportunity in front of you. And if you shed any sort of what your peers are doing or any of like the entitlement, like you get to get a PhD. And you have the intelligence to do it. And you have whatever capacity to like be enrolled in this program and to finish it. Like you have that. And so I would look at it also as like I would surrender into the service of it. If you decide it's a yes, and I would act that out. And then I would decide like whether it's going to be Lex Friedman or someone else, like exactly who is going to be the representation of the how you're going to use your time. And then it's like it is, and I'm not trying to deify Lex Friedman anybody, but it's like, this is where deity practices really help. We often talk about, just like a stage name for people that like, who wrote Think Like a Stripper, Erica Learmark, right? Like why strippers take stage names, right? Is it's like because they take on a different persona.
Yeah.
Right. And so you take on the persona of the person that finishes the PhD, the person that has a great relationship with their supervisor, the person that, and in that you open a flexibility of character, you literally expand your identity because you can always go back to being the old Alja. But unless you force her to become someone else, and force, a lot of people are going to say it's like it's obviously a forceful verb, right? But to some degree, like I had to originally, and now it's getting easier, but like force myself to start learning some biochemistry, like slow down and read the studies and look up parts of words I don't know. I don't have Latin. I don't have Greek. I don't really have biochemistry, right? And I'm trying to understand how nitric oxide works. Nitric oxide, so like the amyloid plaques in the brain and the biofilms and all that.
Yeah.
Right. And the whole like enteric pathways and that. So that's the biofilms, the dysbiotic biofilms. That's all AMA.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at like AMA in any system is going to show up in the microbiome. So then like, what is the microbiome of the brain? Is it in the gut? Is it entirely in the gut, or is any of it in the brain? Or like, you're going to be able to, because of finishing, you will have to grow. And that's what you want to get curious about. It's like, what ways is it making you grow? What skill do you need to finish it? You need grit, you need perseverance, and like, what else? Where is it weak?
I think, grit and perseverance is something I have in general, but that's never been a problem. It's more the question, it's the why. It's the why, and like seeing things that are out of alignment and realizing you're still doing that. And this has been a thing really for me. It's like so many times asking this question, why am I still here? Like, why am I still here? And not just me asking, other people asking me this question, right?
Yeah.
But maybe sometimes like like what you're saying, and I've been trying to reframe this in a way of like, what am I learning? What is the growth opportunity here? What can I do to become different, become a new person? But I think sometimes it will just have to be shutting off this part of my mind that is constantly like, repeating the same thoughts and just being like, we know we don't want to do this, right?
Yeah.
Like we know this is not the long-term goal, like fuck it, whatever.
Right.
But we can still finish this and then we get with everything else. And I think this is what it will happen. I
think so. And I like this morning I was at my desk by 4:30. It's like, would I rather meditate? Would I rather be doing asana? Would I rather be, right? And it's a little different because I really get to control my research and writing. So my why is pretty strong, but I have to sometimes remind myself of like, why? And then when you have time for your practices and exercise, it's like so much more potent. It's like who you become is so much more chiseled and sculpted because of the discipline of the amount of time it takes to it'll take you to finish the PhD.
I think
So is there anything that's out of ethics with it? Is it like an ethical issue?
Well, there's the animal research part.
Well, no, I don't mean that. I just mean in part of like, it seemed like what you were saying is like the work doesn't matter. Like it's not being done in the right, you don't have time to do it in the right way, or was there?
I mean, it depends of how high you set the bar. And where I am, the bar is really freaking high, right? It's like nature or science, basically. That's kind of it, ideally, which means like insane, it's like it demands 100% of you, and I'm not willing to give that. And I'm not willing to put 500 hours in to learn to program in 3 different programming languages and to learn all of these other things, because I mean, quite honestly, I think it's a bit insane what's happening with the field of research. And a lot of people too, it's like there's so much on one person, which you just don't have the skill set and don't have the ability, and you're constantly floating somewhere and hoping that things will work out, and then being like, is this correct? Is that correct? I don't know. So I think this has been a huge part of it, but really the solution here is just deciding that I don't care about the bar being super high. Like I just finish and I get out of here.
Yeah.
And I think that solves most of this part. Then of course you just need to get the approval, because you need your committee and your supervisor actually being okay with that, because they can always block you. But I'm hoping that wouldn't be a problem.
Okay, good. I think a lot of energy is going to get freed up when, I mean, this is, if you read the Yoga Sutras, right, even the first 10 of them, it's really clear that the fluctuation of the mind is what doesn't allow the higher power of the mind. It's just, I mean, it's just simply entertaining fluctuation. So a fluctuation in an extreme is doubt. And if you read further in the Yoga Sutras, I think it's in book 2, it talks about, more or less the fastest way to take yourself out is doubt. So right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, once you decide and commit to the end, you cannot allow the fluctuations. And so then it sounds like the plan is to just be very much, it's like, act like the professional that your supervisor needs you to be in order for her to supervise you.
Yep. That's a very nice way to put it. Yeah.
And then show up and let her mold you in that. It's not permanent, right? But it's like, there's something there to learn. There's something there to get. There's a reason she's at the top of the game. Her IQ is probably through the freaking roof to do this, right? And it's like, tons of management issues, personality issues, like all of that. Like, just look for the good. Every situation, like, I'm going to look for the good. See the Shri is the practice. Like, look for the good, look for the good, look for the good, look for the good. Anything, like, and it's just putting on the blinders to like everything else. And that is the fire. That's the tapas.
Yeah, that's been, I think, also part of it. It's just that it's been really hard to do that, because in general I try to like always see the silver lining, what's good, even if it's just a lesson. It's been hard as well, because it's been it's just quite unhealthy like environment, and like
super unhealthy environment. I get it.
And it's like a lot of clashing, like she's on one side, people are on the other, there's like 15 elephants in the room with like all the stuff that's not working. And it's been really hard, because whoever you talk to is just like bombarded with like, this is not working, that's not working, this is shit, that is shit. Like, oh my God, it's been like, when you really have to completely isolate yourself to get away from that. Which that is a bit unhealthy for other reasons. It's been you kind of feel like you need to double up all of your energy and everything to like hold the line and be like, no, like we're not going to go into everything that's not working.
Yeah. So use it if you can, if it's like partners in the process, see if you can get some ground rules, just like we do in YHC. And you can pick out any of the ones in YHC, but it's like, you guys, if we're going to get through this alive, let's have some ground rules. So like I do this, for instance, with it's a lot to ask. Even start with one ground rule, like, it's like,
no whining.
Well, you get 60 seconds. That's it. just get it all out, everybody, just get it all out. Or start with a positive focus if they can get there. So for instance, I was driving carpool soccer. And it was long, like we live kind of far from other towns. There was a game. And one of the kids complained for like 15 minutes. And it was just like, it was like everything. She was just in that mindset, it's like wearing the dirty spectacles. And she wanted to come back with us. And I said, you can't get in my car unless you agree not to complain. And Indy had to tell her. I was like, because she was asking me if she could get right back. And I was like, she can, but she can't complain. I can tell her, you can. She's like, I will, And then the girl looked at me and she's like, I get it. So children have this intelligence, right? It's like, we know. Adults have often forgotten that. But you might, if they can't follow a ground rule like that, then you have to, again, it's the blinders. Like you have to choose someone great. I mean, you could choose, someone in the most abhorrent circumstance, like Solzhenitsyn, right? And just say like, okay, if he could do it in a concentration camp, I can do it through my PhD program. And then that's deity worship. Right. Yeah. And you may have to choose someone who really overcame the most probably insane environment any human could overcome.
Yeah.
And if you decide on Friday with your supervisor that you're not up for all that and the toxicity of the environment and all that, like you can't come through the other side, then it's the fluctuations of the mind the other way. Then you do just walk away and you dive 100% into YHC. You'll have to meet the same demons in yourself, in the marketing and in the sales.
Yeah, I know. I've seen them many times now. They're loud.
Yeah, right. And they're no more positive than your fellow PhD students.
Oh God, no, they're way worse. Yeah, no, that's very true. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it is the same lesson. It just manifests perhaps slightly differently, but yeah.
And we'll still be here. Like, I'm not going anywhere, like we'll be together in 2 years, figuring out the next phase of your expansion and blah, blah, blah. If you choose to do the PhD thing and finish it and,
yeah,
it's, okay.
So would you suggest then like minimizing YHC in the meantime?
Yeah. And just, absolutely. But I would also practice acting like the person it's the same deity practice. It's the same discipline of like, act like the person you need to become to do that when you do that.
Do we have a person who did both?
Yeah. Marie Harder finished both. She finished her PhD in YHC. Someone else I coached finished her PhD, it was a while back, but it was a lot of the stuff when she walked away and didn't finish and then realized that like she wanted the PhD, like she wanted the practice, and then it was hard because once you let go of the academic lifestyle and you experience freedom, it's heroin.
No, that's clear to me. Like, I'm not going back if that's it. Like,
yeah.
So I either push through and I'm done with it, or I quit now and I'm done with it. But I'm done with it. Like, that's clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's good about YHC is that it's not, I mean, a lot of people have these grandiose dreams of being self-employed and entrepreneurship and and what you've also seen in that is like, oh no, that's hard too. Like,
but the why is there, and
I know the why is there. Yeah.
And the part of me knows that I'm totally capable of that, and that would be really freaking nice. And I think this is the part of me that's also like the PhD seems even less appealing, because I'm like, I know if I committed to that 100%, like I know it could really grow, right? And it's so interesting.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's always going to be there. I mean, they're both always going to be there. I'm not trying. I know it sounds like I'm trying to encourage you one way or another. I do know that the issue, the core of the issue is the fluctuation. And that fluctuation is also there when you do marketing and sales.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fluctuation of self-doubt, that has to be, that's what you're overcoming right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's been that's been becoming really clear recently. Yeah. It's funny, it's like the same thing I teach people, right? In the habit course, it's like you have to look in the future and apply it to now, but totally like skipped it in this context myself, right? It's just like, oh, it's the same thing, like, wow, how did you not see that one?
Well, right, because it's so how can you apply that this week?
Well, finding my person, who it's going to be, that I'm going to be looking for it, setting my environment in a way to support me with that.
Yeah, good.
Setting all of that up, and then having the meeting, and then committing, making the decision, and like then making a plan on like when I commit, what's the milestones, what's the actions, monthly, weekly, daily, how am I going to get there?
Good. And then good, that's all good. And then leadership, either self-leadership or leadership within your peer group. What does that look like? Because that's the opposite of submissive too, because it's toxic.
Well, it will have to be both. Like for myself, it will just be the discipline, and like, again, like as you said, having this more of like a masculine edge to the being like, it'll just have to get done. Like that's that.
Yeah.
It's just non-negotiables. And within the peer group, to be honest, I feel like this actually ties back into the like perhaps low self-worth too. Like choosing even to necessarily be with those people, right?
You have a choice. Okay.
I mean, it's like, let's put it this way. The choice is not huge, like objectively, because of COVID and because I don't have a big social circle in Germany. That's basically all I have. And they're also taking up the time that I do have. So maybe if I say no, someone else will fill that hole, right?
Yes.
Just this trust.
That's true.
Either that or setting boundaries. I mean, like, I'm not having this conversation.
Yeah.
And I think this is, I'm pretty okay with that as is. Like, I'm okay.
Well, and you have tools in YHC with the accountability partnerships, with the dynamic groups. Like you can see who wants to play. Yeah. And those who can't, like, it's clear to you that when you engage with that person, it's you have to call your own shots in order to protect your awareness and your focus.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is really what it is seeing that some people I hang out with are just not willing to play. It's more of like they are there to whine and to complain, and that's just the way they operate in the world, and I'm not interested in that. Yeah.
Right. And you don't have time for it right now.
I don't have time for it.
Okay, good. Good. Yeah. Big stuff at 26. And I think I went through something, entirely different, but very similar, where I realized that, I live in vacation communities. And so most of my peer group in these localities are there's not much motivation historically. It's changed maybe a little bit because tons of people have moved here since COVID. We got hip and popular and expensive and trafficky, but as a result, people that are professionals are moving in, which for me is fun. for intelligent conversations and more academic orientation and macro thinking and that sort of thing. But early on, I had to realize that my peer group had a very different trajectory than I did.
Yeah.
And so my discipline had to be entirely self-reliant and self-motivated, and that my rules were for me.
Yeah.
And that has continued to serve me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about that, right? Is it because we emphasize how important the environment is for us, and it's for sure 100% true. And then also it is the case that sometimes it just is outside of your control, and you just have to double down and be like, I just can't count on my environment right now. And I think this for me has been something that's been coming up recently. It's been so much of this desire also to at some point have a community that has a similar vision and similar values, because I've been realizing how much this is just, it can really drain your energy.
Well, that's what you're going to create. That's what you are creating in your group, and that's your marketing for your group. Like, that is honestly the marketing. It's like, because everyone else, if you're experiencing it at the PhD level, I mean, that's a pretty rarefied environment, the ivory tower, right? Brain science, nonetheless. It's not even a soft science, it's brain science. So it's like, oh, dynamic community matters everywhere.
Yeah.
And the people at the highest level have the highest opportunity, really, because they have the most access to information. But you can create that at any level, like with, people at all different types of education and desire and different types of intelligence, and making a stand for, like, in my group, these are my convictions and this is why. In the experiences that you can have and have had in the last 2 years and are going to have in the next year, if you stick it out, it's like, see who you can become and see how much you can control, even in a, and I'm using the word toxic maybe unfairly, but like we'll just call it like a low vibrational environment, a negative, whiny environment, an environment where people are basically wasting each other's time and mental space and attention with negative bias, right? It's negative bias, negativity bias, negative bias. I've seen it both. How do you guys refer to it? It's when negative stressors, right, have overcome the emotional system, and now it's creating chronic inflammation. So everyone's dumbing down their physiology, dumbing down their cognitive functionality through having an emotion that's biased towards negativity. And it's addictive, like any of the negative stressors. It's as addictive as French fries or heroin, right?
It's super addictive. Yeah.
Super addictive. And you're going to say, like, okay, I have to have positive bias in an environment of negative bias. Now, if you can figure that out and you can practice that for the next year, and in your coaching, like, you keep emphasizing that and you care about the why so much, you're making a stand for it, but you're acting it out in a very intense environment, right? You'll really learn it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a good skill to have. What a great opportunity to acquire it.
What a great opportunity, Alja.
Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Okay, good.